Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. So Liverpool have just beaten Brighton and Hove Albion by 1-0 to put themselves back on top of the Premier League table. It's another 3 points. It's another clean sheet as well to continue what is technically a perfect half of the season, but I think it is fair to say that that game was not quite as easy and not quite as much of a stroll in the park as maybe all of us had hoped. You know, I think we looked at Brighton, looked at the fact the fixture was at home and thought this is probably going to be similar to the West Ham game, you know, a 4-0 or a 3-0, a pretty much a canter for Liverpool. But I think, and a lot of credit does have to go to Brighton because I think they had a really strong game plan and they executed it very well today. But they really did push Liverpool right to the end of the game, and I will come on to the squeaky bum time that did start to appear in the last 10 minutes or so. But I think Liverpool was still pretty good value for their win. I think there was still plenty of positives in that performance, and most of them were in the first half, so I will start off with that. I think what really impressed me about that first half was the amount of work Liverpool did off the ball, because given how much time we spend in possession and how much time we spend in the opposition half, you'd forgive us when we do give the ball away and we do let Brighton have a little bit of it, or we'd get a pass cut out or anything like that, to just drop off ever so slightly and take a moment to gather ourselves and just rethink what we're trying to do. But straight away, as soon as we lost the ball, people were flying into tackles, they were closing down spaces, they weren't giving Brighton space to breathe, and it did essentially force them to change their game plan, because I think at the start they did kind of try and do what they did against Man United, where they also closed down spaces, they tried to get in players' faces, give them no space to manoeuvre and close off the passes and stuff like that. But the thing with Liverpool is they're just so good in tight spaces. They've got so many players who are great on the ball, who are great dribblers, and there's so many passes available at all times that Brighton just couldn't do that, and Liverpool were actually the ones who were getting in their faces an awful lot more. And I thought that was absolutely fantastic to see, the way that we pressed them so much. We essentially forced them to stand off within about 20 minutes of the game, and the pressing is essentially what gets the only goal of the game in the end. You know, it's a really good run and tackle by James Milner, and I think one that is definitely a move that looks like it's been worked on, because we left the whole front three up. You know, Mane, Salah and Firmino were all waiting just alongside that Brighton back line, even though it was a Brighton free kick where, again, you'd maybe expect us to drop off. We're expecting them to hit it long or anything like that, but they don't. They play it short, and Milner just flies in with the tackle, wins the ball back, and then Mane to Firmino to Salah, and then it's a phenomenal finish by Mohamed Salah. You know, you can play it down and say that, you know, he's one-on-one with the keeper because there's no defenders around him and it's a fairly decent angle, but at the end of the day, it's quite a tight angle. He's still quite far out as well. He's only just got into the box, and for him to be able to pull off that finish, when you look at how close to the goal he gets to it as well, it's absolutely phenomenal, and it is essentially the mark of a world-class player. And for me, it feels like Mohamed Salah has finally announced himself, because, you know, he did score in the first game, of course, but he wasn't maybe as involved as we would have liked him to be. In the Palace game, he was involved. He gets the assist and wins the pen and causes the red card and everything, but it just doesn't quite happen for him in front of goal. And that finish today, that goal today, was the kind of football that we saw from Mohamed Salah last season, the kind of football that surprised and excited us so much. So for me, that's a fantastic sign that he is still capable of pulling off world-class finishes like that. And that is essentially the only real moment of quality in the game, you know, because it was very stodgy, it was pretty turgid at times, and while Brighton did give us a good game, they never really had a moment like that where a player just shone out above everything else and managed to play such a brilliant finish. So it was really, really good stuff from Mohamed Salah. Hopefully that is him now back on track and ready to take on the rest of the Premier League this season. I mean, apart from that, I think the front three did lack a little bit of chemistry. So I think in both halves, really, in the first half and the second half, it feels like there isn't quite a consistency there. You know, they are still finding each other very well. They are always attempting these audacious passes and stuff like that. And I think the main problem is at the moment, they're not always coming off. You know, sometimes they do. Sometimes it does still look fantastic, and obviously they all link up brilliantly for that first goal, so it's important that they're still capable of doing it. But I think the bar was set so high last season with the way that we did play going forward offensively, the way that we created chances. We essentially created a goal scoring chance every time any of those three got on the ball in a dangerous area. So, you know, it's not something to be too worried about, because it is the third game of the season and they all came back at different times. You've got to factor in the World Cup. It makes sense that maybe they're a little bit more rusty than we'd hope. But I think there is still a little bit more consistency in terms of the chemistry and link-up play between them that still needs to come along before we see them at their absolute maximum capacity. But yeah, Liverpool went in at half-time 1-0 up, and then the second half just felt a little bit stodgy and turgid, to be honest. And I think, again, a lot of credit goes to Brighton, because as they sat off more, they started to realise how to neutralise the threat from Liverpool, and I think we did really kind of struggle to find any way through them at times. We were still probing, we were still moving the ball from side to side, and there were a few flashes of brilliance where we looked like we were about to create a goal scoring chance, but it never quite happened in terms of creating loads of chances and piling on loads of pressure. And I think, again, so much credit to Brighton, because their game plan in that last 10 minutes did start to become clear, because I think once you saw what they were doing in that last period of the game, it became clear that they were actually just trying to see it out until about 80 minutes and then just absolutely go for the jugular. And to be fair, they did it really, really well. I think you could say that Liverpool defended well, but I think there were still a couple of very nervy moments where Van Dijk lets a ball over his head. There's one corner that comes in and we miss the second ball, and it creates a bit of pandemonium in the box. So on another day, we could have quite easily have drawn that game, but I think there were just a couple of moments where we did essentially get away with it. You know, we've got a fantastic save from Alisson right at the end. That was really, really good. You know, some people are trying to play it down and say that Liverpool fans are sort of being overzealous in their appreciation of Alisson, but at the end of the day, this isn't the kind of goalkeeping we've seen at Anfield for years. To see someone essentially save 2 points for us at the end of the game is not something that's happened regularly for Liverpool in the past. So hopefully that's the kind of thing that Alisson, well, not really do on a regular basis, because we don't want to be in that situation too often, but it is a huge boost for us for knowing that even if our attack and our midfield and our defence lets us down, we've still got a last line of defence in the goalie who's capable of pulling off top quality saves to stop Brighton from equalising. So yeah, that was good as well. He obviously has the little sombrero moment where he dinks it over someone, and that's the kind of thing we've been told to expect from Alisson. It's nice to see him actually do it in a Liverpool shirt for the first time, and obviously you get some great appreciation from the Anfield crowd. There's another moment where he maybe takes it a little bit too far, puts himself in a spot of bother, but he clearly knows how to recover well in those situations. You know, he nearly gives the ball away, but he slides in and digs the ball away really well. So that's another positive sign there, that even when these audacious moves don't come off for him, he has a plan B in his head, essentially, of how to get out of danger there. So a good performance from Alisson, all things considered. Another deserved clean sheet for him. I think a player who was key for us in that second half, especially as Brighton started to pile on the pressure, was Jordan Henderson. And it was a similar situation at Crystal Palace as well, where we brought him on with about 25 minutes to play, and it just makes so much sense to bring him on in those kind of situations, because it just calms everything down so much. And it's a sign that our squad depth this season is clearly a cut above what it was last season, because in these situations last season, we just didn't have someone like Henderson to bring off the bench. And who knows, if we didn't have that as an option, we could have ended up drawing or even potentially losing this game. But he's just such a calm head, and his positional sense was absolutely bang on in that game. Every time Brighton looked to create an attack, especially when they're counter-attacking, he was always in the right place, especially when, you know, our full-backs bombed forward, or even our centre-backs bombed forward. He would always drop back and get into the right positions to just make sure that Brighton never really got a sniff on the counter-attack. And that is so important to have a player who's capable of that, and especially important to have someone like that who can bring on off the bench in these kind of situations. So yeah, another really, really good performance from Jordan Henderson. It is a shame that we can't really fit him in the side at the moment. However, I do think the game against Leicester could be the kind where you think maybe it would make sense to actually bring Jordan Henderson on in midfield, maybe instead of Gini Van Alden, or pushing Van Alden forward or something like that, because I did think it was a really, really sound performance from him. Like I said, in all, defensively, we were ever so slightly questionable in that last 10 minutes. There is also a really good clearance from Jordan Henderson in there as well, when the ball is sort of pinging around the 6-yard box, and it does feel like the kind of goal that 3 years ago we would have conceded, because our defence was just a shambles. But at the end of the day, like I said, those are the kind of games that we drew last season or even lost. So to come away with the 3 points when we're not at our best, and also bear in mind when the opponent is absolutely on it, you know, again, credit to Brighton. They were fantastic today. They played really, really well, and they deserved to take us right to the very end of the game, and potentially even deserved a point. It was just slightly rough on them that they did come up against the Liverpool side, which is starting to feel like a really well-oiled machine now, and that is going to be absolutely crucial in the title race, that we can just pull out these kind of wins week in, week out, whether we play badly or whether we play brilliantly. So all in all, not the best performance in Liverpool, but again, if you're going to perform badly and if the opponent's going to be that good, it's hard to really criticise a team that then still comes away with 3 points. I think my man of the match from that game was James Milner. I think he just worked so tirelessly in midfield, on the ball and off it. Again, his work in terms of pressing and flying into tackles, which he did all the way through the game. And he took a fair few tackles as well. You know, there are a lot of Brighton players flying in, and I think there was probably quite a lot of that was them trying to leave a little bit on him to slow him down and stop him getting in their faces as much, because he probably did start to get on their nerves with just the sheer amount of the pitch that he covered. You know, what I really liked about him was he almost spent half the game playing at right back, because whenever we were in possession, Trent Alexander-Arnold would fly forward into almost a right wing back or even right winger role to try and create opportunities from out wide, and that did mean that James Milner was almost forced to play a right back role, and I thought he was incredibly disciplined in knowing when to be there and when to step out into midfield to try and apply a bit more pressure or try and close down certain spaces. So yeah, I thought he was really good. Positional sense was great. Again, covered the pitch so fantastically. You know, he was everywhere today, tackled really well, took some tackles really well, and also I think if it wasn't for his hard work and his intelligence in terms of pressing, then we don't score the goal that ultimately wins us the game. So yeah, all things considered, not an amazing performance, but another 3 points for Liverpool, another clean sheet for Liverpool, and we are once again top of the league with a perfect record of 9 points. So that is all for today's video. Thank you guys very, very much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, then why not give it a like? If you're around here as well, hit that subscribe button there. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel over the past few days as well. Don't forget to follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter, and I'll be back soon either with some news or the build up for the Leicester game next weekend. Bye for now.